Now we need to implement the methods we set up in the CC_add_task_viewController protocol. To get started, we're going to start in CC_viewController.h, and the first thing we need to do is conform to that protocol so that we get access to those methods. So we need to know about the protocol, so we're going to go ahead and import our CC_add_task_viewController.h file. Now we can have our UI Viewer Controller subclass, specifically the CC View Controller, conform to this protocol. So we're going to say CC add task view controller delegate, and we're going to add inside these angle brackets, and now our class conforms to this protocol so we get access to the methods we define in the protocol. So let's go ahead and implement those methods. We're going to navigate to ccviewcontroller.m, and we're going to go ahead and add a pragma mark in order to organize our methods together. And we're going to call this CC add task view controller delegate. And we can add a subtraction sign because we know this is going to be an instance method, and we can start typing did add task. And because we conform to this protocol, it will autocomplete for us. And we can go ahead and add curly braces. And inside of this, we first need to add our task parameter to our array. So we're going to say self.taskObjects add object, and we can add our task. And we'll add a semicolon after. Now that our array of task objects has the task added to it, and we'll be able to use that array in order to populate our table view, we also want to persist this information in NSUser defaults so that we'll be able to access this if we stop our application and rerun it. So let's go ahead and create an NS mutable array, and we're going to call this mutable array task objects as property lists. And we know that we need to save property lists to NSUser defaults. We can't just save our custom object, our model object. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check to see if we've already saved some items to NSUser defaults. So I'm going to add 3 left brackets, and I'm going to say NSUser defaults, standard user defaults, which will return a user default object, and we're going to be able to call a method on that, and we're going to say array for key, which will return an array from our NSUser defaults for the key that we supply. And we're going to use one of our defines that we set up earlier to make sure we're using the proper key. So we're going to say task object key, and we're going to go ahead and create this as a mutable copy because array for key returns an array, and we want to create a mutable copy of that array because we're saying that we're going to create an NS mutable array here. Next, let's go ahead and add an if statement, and we're going to say if not task object as property list, and we're going to say task object as property list is equal to NS mutable array alloc init. And what we're saying here is if we did not get an NS mutable array back from our NSUser defaults, we need to go ahead and create one. So we'll create, allocate, and initialize this array. If, however, we did get an array back, we're going to skip this line of code. And notice that I'm not using curly braces in this if statement. Because there's only one line of code after this if statement, I can go ahead and just add it right next to my if statement here. And if this evaluates to true, we'll go ahead and allocate and initialize some memory. So the next step, we need to go ahead and convert our task object into a property list. Well, we don't really have a way to do that yet. So we're going to go ahead and create a helper method. So we're going to go down below here, and we can write pragma mark. We can call this helper methods. And we're going to create a helper method to convert a task object into a property list. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to type subtraction sign because this is going to be an instance method, and we're going to say Nsdictionary, which means this is going to return an Nsdictionary. And we're going to give this a method name of task object as a property list. And we're going to say colon cc task, which means we're going to pass a cc task in when we call this method. And we're going to say task object. And we can add some curly braces here. And notice that I'm not declaring this in the header file. This is a private method. Only the CC View Controller class will know about this and be able to implement it. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create an Nsdictionary. And we're going to use our literal syntax to create this dictionary. So I'm going to say at curly braces. And we know that we can create key value pairs in here. And for the keys, I'm going to use the defines I set up in my PCH file. So we're going to say task title, colon, and we're going to say task object dot title, and we can say comma, task description, colon, and we'll access our parameter again. We'll say task object dot description, comma, and let's add another key value pair. So we're going to say task underscore date, and we can say colon, and we're going to say task object dot date. And finally, we're going to do the completion, and we're going to say task underscore completion, colon, and we're going to use at parentheses because we're going to create an NS number, and we're going to say task object dot is completed, and we're going to close our parentheses. So what this is going to do is it's going to take our parameter, which is a bool, so is completed is a bool, and because we do at parentheses, it's actually going to convert this into an NS number. And why do we have to do that? Well, we know that key value pairs both need to be objects. So here we have a string task completion that comes from our define, and we're going to set that equal to, or the key value pair, and we're going to set the value equal to our NS number here. And finally, we'll add a semicolon at the end to finish this statement. So now that we have a dictionary, we've converted our task object into an NS dictionary. We can return this dictionary, and we can use this method in the didAddTask delegate method in order to convert the task object that gets passed in as a parameter into a dictionary. So let's go ahead and use that. We're going to say task objects as property lists, add object, and we're going to call our method. So we're going to say self task object as property list, and we're going to pass in our task. So we're going to pass in our parameter here, and we're going to close our brackets. So now we've managed to add an NS dictionary to our task objects as property lists array. And now we can save this array to our NS user defaults, and we'll replace the old value that we had for our key task objects key. So let's go ahead and we're going to do double F bracket. We're going to say NS user defaults, standard user defaults, and we're going to set our objects. So we're going to use our tasks array here. So we're going to say task objects as property lists, and we're going to do this for key task objects key. And finally, what we're going to do is we're going to sync up all of this data or these changes we made to NS user defaults. So we're going to say NS user defaults, standard user defaults, and we can say synchronize. So now we've saved our new array to NS user defaults. So we're going to add 2 lines of code below this. We're also going to dismiss the view controller when we call this delegate method. So we're going to assume that when the user presses the add task button, they're done using that screen. They don't need any other adjustments. They want to see this information displayed in their table view. So we're going to dismiss the view controller, and we're going to say self dismiss view controller animated. Yeah, let's animate it. It looks pretty cool. And for now, we're not going to use a completion block, so we can just put nil in for that argument. The final thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to reload our table view, because our table view isn't going to know that I've adjusted the property list as well as the array which houses all the information for my tasks. Specifically, it's not going to know that I've added a task to the self.taskObjects array. So I'm going to tell my table view that it should reload all of its information. So we can say self.tableview reload data. I also need to implement the method didCancel. So again, I can do subtraction sign, and I can start typing didCancel. And because I declared this in the protocol and I conform to this protocol, this class now knows that this is a valid method. So by starting to type the name in, again, it's autofilling for me. So I'm going to add curly braces. And all I'm going to do when I press the cancel button is I'm going to dismiss the view controller. So we're going to simply say self-dismiss view controller. And yes, we're going to animate it. Again, we're not going to use a completion block, so we can use nil for the argument. So great, now I've implemented both of my methods for the protocol I defined in cc_add_task_viewcontroller.h. And when I call the methods inside of cc_add_task_viewcontroller.m, these are the two sets of logic that we'll evaluate.